The meeting will come to order. Can you please call the roll?
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman. For House Education, January 15th, 2025, Representative Bratton,
Present.
Representative Erickson, Representative Gugamas,
Here.
Representative Kelly,
Here.
Representative Lawley,
Here.
Representative Singh,
Here.
Representative Strock,
Here.
Representative Williams, Chairman Andrew.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. So as we begin the meeting, I want to have a quick reminder about the decorum. I want to call your attention to the committee's rules. Copies of the decorum rules are located with hard copies of the agenda and are available for view on the legislative website on the page for this meeting. We note that these rules at the beginning of each meeting simply as a reminder that we expect everyone in attendance to be treated in a courteous and respectful manner. And welcome to the first meeting of the House Education Committee of the 68th Legislature. I want to give everybody an opportunity to quickly introduce yourself. Just tell us your name and where you're from. I think we all know each other, but I think we should introduce ourselves to the state. So can we start with Representative Kelly, please?
Representative Tom Kelly, House District 30, that is in Sheridan. Representative Joel Guggenmoss, Riverton, District 55.
Representative Laurie Bratton from Sheridan County, that's House District 51.
Representative Daniel Singh from House District 61, right here in Cheyenne.
I'm Representative Martha Lawley from House District 27. That's in Washakie County, all of Washakie County and part of South Bighorn County. And I previously served on the Education Committee for 2 years, and I'm very happy to be back.
Representative Tommy Strock, and I'm out of Douglas in House District 6. And this is my first time on education. I was in revenue, so this is learning for me also.
I'm Representative McKay Erickson from House District 21 in Afton.
Representative J.D. Williams, House District 2, Weston, Niobrara, and Goshen County.
I'm Chairman Ocean Andrew. I've been on the this is my third term on the Education Committee. And I look forward to working with all of you. Just as a reminder, especially to our new members and as well as to the public, all communication needs to go through the chair. So House Bill 17 is now on the table for consideration. And this is a committee bill from the summer, so I guess it's up to me and Representative Lawley to explain. Let's see. Would you be willing to explain the bill?
Go down there, here, I can
I think you can stay here. Yeah. Is that what you want to do?
Yeah.
All right, Representative Lawley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 17 is a bill we worked on during the interim, as the chairman said, and it has to do with career and technical education grants. We looked at a possibility of combining a couple different grant programs that were similar for CTE, but in the end determined they were kind of different in their purpose. So we actually didn't go that route, but we ended up making some amendments to one of the particular grants. And that's what you have before you in House Bill 17, is we really made a change in a couple of ways. You see that there's, we raised it from $50,000 to $75,000 per year for the grants. And then we also changed a little bit of the conditions for the grants and how long they could basically, how many years apart from the date of application, use of other CT funds, things like that. So what the goal was here is to continue to make it possible for districts, and honestly, in some ways, particularly smaller districts, although it's not just for them, but to be able to get additional money for equipment and supplies and things. So that's what this grant does. We've just basically increased the grant and kind of slightly tinkered with some eligibility requirements that were sometimes difficult for some schools to meet. So that's what it does. I think if you want me, I can walk you through it specifically, but it's pretty straightforward, I think.
Thank you, Vice Chair Lawley. Do we have any members of the legislature not on this committee who would like to offer comment on this bill? Seeing none, we'll now take comment from state agencies.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the House Committee. My name is Wanda Maloney from the Department of Education. It's a pleasure to be here this afternoon. I'll turn it over to my colleague who does oversee the Career and Technical Education Department at the agency.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Jennifer Lahith, and I'm the College Career and Accountability Supervisor at the department. As Representative Lawley mentioned, we have worked with the Joint Education Interim Committee on the amendments within the bill, and the change does move the proposed maximum that a district can receive from $50,000 to $75,000 per year, creating extra funding within that 2-year period if a district were to request the maximum, which would be $150,000 over that 2-year period. Chief Maloney is passing out a comparison table. We do have 2 different state-funded grants that we administer at the department, and they are quite different in nature and amounts. And so that comparison chart will hopefully shine some light on both of those grants and offer some information regarding the purposes and how we administer those grants at the department. Within the past couple of years, this equipment and supplies grant is a relatively new grant, so we have only awarded it the past few years. But some of the examples that we have awarded to districts over those couple of years are a wood turning lathe, a greenhouse, business and marketing equipment, and an elite EDS lathe. So some of that equipment, as you can imagine, is quite expensive, and that is the reasoning for that increase from $50,000 to a $75,000 max within that bill. In addition, I would just state that Superintendent Dagenfelder's strategic plan has focused on CTE and would further support any efficiencies and streamlining that we can provide to districts going forward. With that, I would stand for any questions that you might have or any comments.
Are there any questions for the department? Thank you.
Thank you.
And we will now take public comment on the bill. Good morning. Please state your name and where you're from.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Boyd Brown. I'm the Wyoming Association of School Administrators Executive Director, and that's the superintendent's organization across Wyoming. Again, we support this bill and appreciate the opportunity for especially some of our smaller districts to be able to write a grant to get some supplies or equipment that they may not be able to get if they didn't have that opportunity. An example that I would give you whenever I was the superintendent in Claremont, I'll give you a little background on myself. I've been the superintendent in Cheyenne and also in Claremont, Wyoming. So I've been the superintendent in the largest and smallest districts in the state. In Claremont, trying to save up to get a plasma cutter would take quite a few years to be able to do that. Being able to get a grant allowed us to be able to do that and for our students to be able to do some really neat stuff. So again, supporting the bill and hope that you will as well. And I'll stand for any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Brown? Representative Erickson.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. I would also, you gave some examples of a plasma cutter. I'm interested to know, and I know that Department of Education listed some of the things that they've done. Where else have you seen this used?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Brown.
Representative Erickson, I don't have any real specific examples other than the ones that I've shared with you. But again, it could be anything from buying a new lab for computers. It would have to adhere to the grant and the rules in the grant. But I think there are a lot of different things in a lot of different areas that you could purchase some things. I would guess that there have been 3D printers that have been purchased to be able to do some things, welding machines, probably some auto mechanics machines and everything. But again, it's beneficial for all of our schools out there, but very beneficial for our smaller schools.
Seeing no further questions, thank you. Good morning. Please state your name and where you're from.
Afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Jessie Defoe, and with me is Rob Hill, and we are here on behalf of the Wyoming Association for Career and Technical Education. We first just want to thank you for looking at this over the interim and all the work that's already gone into this. For those of you who are new to the committee, just a quick moment to tell you a little bit more about WACTE, or the Wyoming Association for Career and Technical Education. We're a group that supports CTE teachers and that CTE teachers are a part of to look at different issues that are affecting them. We have some different sectors from industrial to agriculture, business, occupational, computer science. All those teachers come together. And so we are here to speak on behalf of this bill today in support of that. Something important to note is that this does not, while we're asking for a funding increase of what teachers can apply for, this does not change the pool of money that's already set aside. So we're not asking to increase any funding allocation to this program. It's just changing the perimeters within the program for the reasons that were mentioned from previous speakers of, hey, there's inflationary costs of even 2x4s and bigger equipment purchases. So we're looking for support in that area. The other piece that really goes into play with this legislation as well is looking at changing from 5-year look back to a 2-year look back. And so it asks that districts spend their 29% additional in order to be eligible. And for that, I'm going to have Mr. Hill explain a little bit more about that 29%.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I am Rob Hill, and I serve as president of Wyoming Skills USA and the Public Policy Director for the Wyoming Association of Career and Technical Education. The 29% material, supplies, and equipment fund is generated from enrollment in 9 through 12 CTE programs and is intended to be used for 9 through 12 CTE programs. The intent of this grant was to assist districts that fully expend that allotment. Each year, districts report their expenditures to the Department of Education, and districts that are eligible can apply if they expend these funds for their last 5 years under current law. If the statute is amended, it would change the look-back period to 2 years. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? Representative Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I could just please have a little bit of detail of why the change from 5 years to 2 years. It makes sense, but I want to make sure I understand correctly.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Representative Kelly. We just started the grant just recently, and the 5-year look back, there was very few districts that were eligible. We have to go back and look at if it's fully expended year by year, and that's why we don't have a lot of grants yet. As we're trying to find the nice area between accountability and meeting the intent of the grant. So that's correct, sir.
Thank you. Would you like a follow-up? No. Any more questions? All right, thank you. Good morning. Please state your name and where you're from, please.
Good morning. My name is Rennie McKay. I'm the president of the Wyoming Business Alliance. And we represent businesses from all industries in the state and all corners of the state. And career technical education is very important to our members. Right now, our most significant priority is workforce for the businesses of the state. As I talk to them about how do you grow more in Wyoming, their biggest impediment right now is a lack of talent. And so you're not taking on an extraordinary change here today, but every little bit helps. Right now, there's probably about 6,000 vacant jobs posted in Wyoming. So that's how many jobs employers have created, and they can't fill them right now. And so I just can't tell you how important career technical education is in the relationship between the K-12 system, the community colleges and the university, and our private educational institutions are to the employers of this state right now. So thank you very much for taking this one on. It's not a huge change, but as you just heard, we're not getting these grants out, and there's a real need for career technical education in Wyoming right now for businesses of the state. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. McKay? Thank you. Good morning. Please
morning.
state your name and
Yes.
where you're from.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, my name is Kelly Little. I represent the Associated General Contractors of Wyoming. I'm sitting today in support of this bill. We, as many of you know, there is a pretty significant and sustained workforce shortage in Wyoming, particularly in the construction trades, but in also similar industries. Any flexibility that is, permitted in these programs in the K-12 school districts really help build the workforce that is coming out of the schools and being put, those students are talented, and then they are being put to work in Wyoming in the construction trades and similar industries. So we really appreciate the flexibility that this bill provides, and we wholeheartedly support any CTE in Wyoming. So with that, I would stand for any questions.
Any questions for Ms. Little? Representative Erickson.
Mr. Chairman, sorry to call you Mr. Speaker last time. The few nerves, did you notice that? I'm always interested, and I should have probably asked Mr. McKay this, but because I have the same problem in filling jobs. Do you have any breakdown as to what is the major issue with filling those types of jobs? I mean, is it certification? Sounds like he's got the answer.
Sure, and Mr. Chairman, I'll take a stab at that as well before Mr. McKay. But I would say for us, the biggest thing is just the population of Wyoming doesn't sustain the workforce that's necessary for the businesses that are here. And also, the migration out of our young people that really affect the businesses, particularly businesses that don't require a four-year degree. Those students are really being pushed into going to college, and that's great for the ones that works for, but there are a lot of options out there for folks that want to just get straight to work.
Mr. McKay?
Mr. Chairman, I think Ms. Little said it very well. It is a demographics issue. Right now, when I said that we have about 6,000 vacancies, the numbers are the number of jobs that we have in Wyoming. And then if you look at workforce, that's people who are currently employed plus those who are unemployed. So that means they're seeking jobs. That's that delta of about 6,000 spots. So again, job creators are doing incredible right now. There just aren't the people. And we see about 2/3 of people leave Wyoming as their young people. So I think CTE is an excellent way to try to keep young people in this state a little bit longer, get them the skill they need to go to work in high school and connect them to the opportunities. So.
Thank you.
All right, any more questions? All right, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Travis Detai. I'm the Executive Director of the Wyoming Mining Association. And I don't often come before the Education Committee, so I'll tell you kind of what we do. We are the state's trade association for the state's coal, uranium, bentonite, trona companies. We're the nation's largest producer in all of those minerals. We also represent 2 companies developing rare earths. We're representing gold companies, lithium. We represent 2 advanced nuclear power companies. And we also represent about 100 companies that provide service and supplies to the mining industry. So this is a huge issue for us. And first of all, in support of the bill, we need a strong CTE program in this state because we really do need to start, keep developing that future workforce for our major industries in the state. So a lot has already been said, and I would echo what my colleagues have said, and we really appreciate your support on this bill.
All right, thank you. Any questions for? Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Detail. Mr. Hill.
Mr. Chairman and Representative Erickson, to your question about some of the workforce issues, it's certainly a multifaceted answer. Much of it has to do with teachers. We've seen a 22% decrease in CT teachers in Wyoming since the 1990s. And, historically, we didn't graduate quite that many students into these occupations, but recently we've seen a great spike with the work that's being done at the College of Education. There's 30 students in the program, and we haven't had numbers like that in a long time. So it's an answer of teachers, facilities. We definitely have bottlenecks in our communities where there's high demand for these CT classes from students, but we just can't get enough of them through. And then certainly funding follows the students too. So I appreciate the question. I hope that helps answer some of it.
Yes, Representative Lawley. Vice Chair Lawley.
Yeah, I think just a comment. We do have another CTE bill coming that I think is even more significant than this one, and it's for all the reasons you're hearing right now, the importance of CT and how we're trying to address that as the Education Committee, because it is multifaceted and we need to do better. So, but there's another one coming, so hang on.
All right, Ms. Taylor.
Good afternoon. It is afternoon now, isn't it?
It is. My vice chair just corrected me that it is, in fact, the
I almost
afternoon. and
said morning
That's
as
why
well.
it's a good thing to have a lawyer here, so.
Thank you for that, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Erin Taylor, and I represent another association. We call ourselves the Other WACD, or when we say WACD, they say they're the Other WACD. The Wyoming Association of Community College Trustees. And so representing all of the 8 community colleges, the 56 elected trustees at each of those colleges, 2 of which from each college serve on my board. We're a C6 organization. We work very closely with the people you've already heard from today, and of course, serving the needs of industry across the state. You've already heard a comprehensive view of all of the things that are involved with CTE. As you know, those are the most expensive programs to stand up. That is the same at the community colleges. Many of those students are dually enrolled. And so that is something that's important for us to support our K-12 partners as we meet the needs of the workforce moving forward. So anything that I can offer in terms of helping you understand the role of the community colleges, you'll hear from me often, and I'm happy to support this bill in that space. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you. Any further public comment? Good afternoon. Please state your name and where you're from.
Good afternoon, Chairman. My name is Patricia McCoy, and I'm the chapter chair for Moms for Liberty of Laramie County. I'm here today because we do support additional funding for CTE. It's an extremely important program. However, we have concerns about the budgeting transparency on where this money is being spent. Is it being spent appropriately on the needs for the CTE programs in the schools, or is that funding being used for other things, but under the guise of the CTE programs? So that is where our concerns in, but we do agree with increasing the cost because they're spot on correct. These items that need to be purchased are extremely expensive.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. McCoy? Thank you.
Thank you.
Seeing no further public comment is now closed. Committee, what is your pleasure?
Move the bill.
Moved by Vice Chair Lawley, seconded by Representative Strock. Was there any amendments? Is there any discussion?
I guess my one question, when you're talking about that, does that talk about, is it all of your like FFA or ag classes and it's welding and auto and it's all those? Okay, that was my question.
Vice Chair Lawley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The way this is constructed, it's a grant program. So you have to apply for the grant, and then you have to show you've met the requirements of the grant and how you use the money. So different than maybe how the block grant works, which we can talk about that sometime. But here, this money goes for equipment and supplies that's much needed, really by every district, but smaller districts in particular. And so, again, this is run as a grant program and doesn't have some of those questions that the block grant kind of can have about moving money around. It's just used for these specific purposes, and districts apply. So I thought I would just clear that up a little bit. So anyway.
Mr. Chairman, I also, and I think Representative Lawley can answer this question, but I believe that we already have checks and balances as to where the CTE money can go. I don't believe that school districts can spend that anywhere else. The CTE program was set up under that, correct?
Vice Chair Lawley.
Sorry,
it's
Mr. Chairman.
I'll get better at this. Vice Chair Lawley.
Thank you. In the block grant, which you're going to learn a little bit more about in the Education Committee, through that model, there are other things in that categories, and schools can choose to use the money that was allotted in the model for CTE on other things. And we're gonna have some talk about that when we see the other bill that does relate to the block grant and CTE. But that's why these grant programs have become so important, to be honest with you, is that it is so much easier to target specific needs of equipment and supplies and know that that money just goes to that. So I would say we can talk about that block grant model, but when you ask it about the model, the money can, and sometimes does, get used by school. They have other needs and they prioritize those needs. That's that local control element, and they will prioritize those needs according to what they have in that district. And sometimes that money within that particular area of the grant model is moved around unless some's taken from CTE to meet other needs. So that's the way the I don't know why I have trouble saying that, block grant model works. That's how it's designed. So I can't say yes to your question, answer your question, but that's why it's different in these grant programs and why we have several of them for that very reason.
Representative Erickson.
Thank you. That helps answer the question. I knew that, but I wanted someone official to talk about that. So I appreciate your time on that.
Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just acknowledging how official Representative Lawley was.
This is going to be a fun year.
Any further discussion?
Call for the question.
Question having been called, please call the roll.
Mr. Chairman, on House Bill 17, Career Technical Education Equipment Grants Amendments. Representative Bratton.
Aye.
Representative Erickson.
Aye.
Representative Guggenmoss.
Aye.
Representative Kelly.
Aye.
Representative Lawley.
Aye.
Representative Singh.
Aye.
Representative Strzok.
Aye.
Representative Williams.
Aye.
Chairman Andrew.
Aye.
You have 9 ayes.
The bill has passed the committee. All right, we are moving on to the next bill, which is House Bill 147. House Bill 147 is now on the table for consideration. Representative Rodriguez Williams, Chairwoman Rodriguez Williams, would you please explain the bill?
Good afternoon, members of the Education Committee. I'm Rachel Rodriguez Williams. I represent House District 50, and I'm here to introduce to you House Bill 147 and ask for your favorable consideration. With your permission, Mr. Chairman, I would like to introduce and walk you through the bill.
Please.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, House Bill 147 takes a necessary acts to divisive activity by banning discrimination against any Wyomingite on the basis of race, color, ethnicity, religion, biological sex, or national origin. The Biden administration sold DEI, known as diversity, equity, and inclusion, as a benign way to address inequalities, but the words for which these letters stand have been twisted beyond all recognition to now mean the exact opposite of what most Americans and Wyomingites believe are meant by diversity, equity, and inclusion. Wyoming government should not take any action that treats individual Americans differently or segregates them because of immutable characteristics such as race, sex, or national origin. This bill restores our state government to the colorblind approach that the Constitution intends, that morality dictates, and that our national unity requires. And I'd like to walk you through the bill. On page 1, line 12, we introduce section 1 creates a new chapter in Title IX that prohibits practices of state institutions. On page 2, a new Wyoming statute 925-101 begins with new definitions. We talk about the term diversity, equity, or inclusion, meaning any program, activity, or policy that promotes differential or preferential treatment of individuals or classifies individuals on the basis of race, color, religion, sex, ethnicity, or national origin. Further down, we talk about government entity, the definition of that, and institutional discrimination, which means any of the following concepts. Moving on to page 3. A, that any race, color, religion, sex, ethnicity, or national origin is inherently superior or inferior. That a person should not be discriminated against or adversely treated because of the person's race, color, religion, sex, ethnicity, or national origin. Moving on, that the moral character of a person is determined by the person's race, color, religion, sex, ethnicity, or national origin. D, that because of a person's race, color, sex, ethnicity, or national origin, the person is inherently racist, sexist, or oppressive, whether consciously or subconsciously. And on line 20E, that by virtue of a person's race, color, religion, sex, ethnicity, or national origin, the person is inherently responsible for actions committed in the past by other members of the same sex, race, color, religion, sex, ethnicity, or national origin. Mr. Chairman, I won't go word for word throughout the bill, but I will tell you that this bill makes it illegal to discriminate in conformance with the United States and the Wyoming Constitution. And I do ask for your favorable consideration and stand for any questions. And the bill does, on page 5, section 2, go into effect no later than July 1, 2025. And I will also note, Mr. Chairman, that there is a lovely typo in this bill on page 3, specifically line 6. And I would ask any members of the committee that entertain the idea to strike the word "not" in that sentence. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chairwoman Rodriguez-Williams. Are there any questions from the committee? Representative Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Reading through this bill, I'm looking at it and I understand the intent of it. I've talked to constituents about this and I've heard some concerns. So I'd like to ask, does this any way prohibit educational facilities, colleges, public schools, which are government entities, from even discussing these issues? Would people not be able to talk about the concept of institutional racism and have an open discussion for it? Or is this prohibiting the state from promoting that ideology without discussion on it? Can you differentiate and clarify that, please?
Chairwoman Rodriguez-Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Kelly, thank you for your question. Essentially, what this bill does in section 1 is it prohibits practices of state institutions. Obviously, we don't want to prohibit any freedom of speech of any individual. And the bill doesn't specify that.
Representative Kelly.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I just want to say that's a relief. As an educator myself and a college professor, I would not want the state telling me what I can and cannot talk about in the classroom.
Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Do we have any comment from state agencies? Mrs. Shaner?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and committee members. Dickie Shaner here to speak on behalf of State Superintendent of Public Instruction, Megan Dagenfelder. She supports this bill. It is part of her legislative priority package. In her role as a trustee at the University of Wyoming, she was instrumental in eliminating the DEI office at the university for the reasons that this bill is being, expanding the scope of that discussion beyond just the university. So just wanted to share her support.
Any questions for the department? Oh, Vice Chair Lawley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Shaner, is it your view and the department's view that this does not interfere with teaching of certain things that perhaps have happened in our history or institutional racism, what that means? And you share the view of Representative Rodriguez-Williams that this bill is not intending to do that?
Mr. Chairman, through you.
Mr. Shaner.
Vice Chairman Lawley, yes.
Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you. Seeing All right, we'll now move to public comment. Any public comment on the bill?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Farmer.
My name is
Good afternoon.
Brian Farmer. I'm the Executive Director of Wyoming School Boards Association. And Mr. Chairman, I wanted to share with you a couple of concerns about language within the bill. And so I want to walk through and point out a couple of those concerns. So, Mr. Chairman, at the bottom of page 2, we're starting definitions. And so the bottom of page 2 at line 22, we're starting to define institutional discrimination. What does institutional discrimination mean? Among the things that it means are listed now on page 3, and as Representative Rodriguez-Williams suggested, on line 6, there's a problem. Because as it says now, it says institutional discrimination means that a person should not be discriminated against or adversely treated because of the person's race, color, religion, sex, ethnicity, or national origin. Then we jump ahead to page 4, and at the end of page 4, we have the prohibition. No governmental entity shall, and now at the top of page 5 at lines 1 and 2, engage in or require instruction in institutional discrimination. As the bill is written right now, what that means is I can't talk about Brown versus Board of Education in a class. I can't provide instructional education on a topic that says that a person should not be discriminated against because of their race. So we have to strike that word not, because it would limit us from talking about Brown versus Board of Education, any United States Supreme Court case about that. And then further, on page 5, require any student, employee, or contractor to attend or participate in any training on institutional discrimination. So we couldn't have them go to a training that says you can't discriminate on the basis of these classes. And so for HR, that means we can't have the HR training that says you cannot discriminate on the basis of race, sex, whatever. So that that single word not certainly needs to be stricken. If B serves any purpose after that, you may consider whether or not B is even necessary, because the full weight of federal law says that it is impermissible to discriminate on any of those bases. So whether it's worthwhile or not, I'll leave that to your judgment, but at the very minimum, strike not, and perhaps strike all of that B, lines 6 through 9 on page 3. The other piece that I would ask for clarity on, have heard both Representative Rodriguez-Williams and the Department of Education say that this does not prohibit discussion. And the place where that becomes concerning is on page 5, it says, engage in or require instruction in institutional discrimination. So if I'm a teacher and I'm engaging in instruction on these concepts, that doesn't mean, we don't want the teacher telling them, student, you should believe that somebody's inferior because their beliefs of some sort. But can we have the conversation? Or does it prohibit the conversation? As plainly written, I don't think it is clear. And so additional language may be necessary to say nothing in this section shall prohibit discussion on these topics. What we don't want is we don't want the teacher teaching that this is a particular belief set and kids should adopt that belief set. But I don't think that there's clarity when it says engage in instruction. Frankly, there are similar sorts of bills in other jurisdictions. And when we go to, say, Florida, we've had legal challenges. And in the Florida courts, they challenge language like this around what instruction is permissible, what instruction is not permissible. And so really just to avoid that, the bill would benefit from clarity that says nothing within this section would prohibit students from engaging in discussion on these topics. So Mr. Chairman, with that, I would be happy to answer any questions, but did want to point out that as written, the bill may have some unintended consequences, and so a little cleanup might be helpful.
Thank you. Any questions? No. All right, thank you. Any further public comment? Good afternoon.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Tate Mullen. I'm the Government Relations Director for the Wyoming Education Association. Boy, if I could just say ditto to Brian Farmer's concerns. We share those exact concerns. I do want to provide, since we have a lot of new committee members, a little bit of insight into our evaluation process. So the Wyoming Education Association uses a policy analyst matrix. All education policies should implement a policy goal of furthering our constitutional mandate to provide adequate, equitable, visionary, unsurpassed, and a modern education for all students in the state of Wyoming. For qualitative bills without a fiscal note, those qualitative policies are solely addressed along, first and foremost, constitutional considerations, alignment with state, federal laws and rules, WEA platforms, and then finally along 5 evaluation criteria. Those criteria include equity, cost effectiveness, political feasibility, administrative feasibility, and effectiveness. Evaluated against the status quo, House Bill 147 sees a reduction in equity, cost effectiveness, and administrative feasibility for the very reasons that Mr. Farmer was discussing. I reached out to a number of our members who are social studies teachers, history teachers, including 2024 Teacher of the Year, John Corbin up in Cody, and had discussions going through the language of the bill and the potential for this to create a chilling effect. That chilling effect is, of course, going to have, given enforcement, that might look different from district to district, from school to school, and even from program to program. There will be variances across districts and even programs. That reduces equity. It potentially disproportionately impacts social studies, histories, civics, and AP educators. Again, it also potentially hampers those education efforts that are required in our Constitution. If we have that chilling effect in classrooms, we are not providing a modern education that prepares our students for the jobs of today and tomorrow. If it's okay with the committee, I just have a few words that 2024 Teacher of the Year John Corbin wanted me to provide. He is, of course, in his class today teaching students of Wyoming, so he couldn't be here. John Corbin noted, he said, "I feel like one of the most important things for them to know is that we are certified by the state to do this job. The great majority of social studies teachers in our state teach our standards, and we teach them well. We care about our students, we are aware of these issues, and we treat them, our students, and our communities with the utmost respect." So with that, I will stand for any questions.
Questions? All right, thank you. All right, please state your name and where you're from.
Hi, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Sophia. I'm currently a student at the university, but today I'm just here on behalf of myself as a Wyoming citizen. I've lived in Wyoming in Albany County for my entire life, and I'm here to urge you to vote no on this bill because, frankly, I think this bill represents an overreach of government authority. The bill explicitly states that a government entity includes universities and public institutions of education and says that it, quote, shall not engage in or require instruction in institutional discrimination. Prohibiting instruction on any subject, especially institutional discrimination, sets a dangerous precedent by allowing the state government to dictate what values and ideas are permissible. This flies in the face of limited government intervention, and I think it threatens to erode the freedom and autonomy of public institutions. It also doubles down on flawed logic while being dishonest in what it's really trying to solve. While I've never been taught that anybody should be blamed for something that they did not do, a prohibition on education that assigns blame ignores the critical difference between blaming an individual for immutable characteristics and holding systems, people, ideologies, and historical actors accountable for their actions. For instance, teaching that slavery was perpetuated by white supremacy and its implications on our country is not an attack on white students. It's an acknowledgement of historical reality. This bill does risk creating a chilling effect in classrooms. Educators may avoid teaching difficult subjects altogether for fear of violating the law. Discussions about racism, anti-Semitism, and other forms of oppression may be watered down or eliminated, leaving students with an incomplete and sanitized view of history. As a Jewish person, I find this trend deeply troubling. My community's history is a painful reminder of what happens when societies refuse to confront uncomfortable truths. For centuries, Jews have been persecuted, discriminated against, and targeted by systems of power. The Holocaust is the most extreme example of this, but it's not the only one. And the failure to fully teach these histories, both the atrocities, the ideologies, and the institutions that enabled them, only makes it easier for these patterns to repeat. Please, members of the committee, I urge you to uphold our Wyoming tradition of freedom. Please don't tread on me and vote no on this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. I'm Sarah Burlingame. I'm the Executive Director of Wyoming Equality, and I stand in front of you in opposition to this bill, but also just in awe of what the public schools in Wyoming can produce. I think Sophie is the best possible data we could have, that the system that we have right now is working very well. The only point I wanted to bring out is I wanted to undergird what Representative Kelly brought forward, saying that there is the potential for a chilling effect that this bill brings, and that as Wyoming citizens, as people who are interested in the education in Wyoming, we take for granted that we have the right to speak. We take for granted that we are a robust culture that is not afraid of controversy, and that when ideas are put in front of us, we meet them head on. That it is antithetical to being a student or a teacher in Wyoming to be so fragile that someone's opposing view has to be kept out of our classroom. And I think, ironically and paradoxically, that the people who brought this bill have that same concern, right? Like, you can read in it that they are worried that some ideas may be deemed outside of the canon. And we can't bring them forward, we can't discuss them. But I want to break with the folks who were also in opposition, who said that they were afraid that it might have a chilling effect, that this may make speech less free in our classrooms, and say, it's not maybe, it's an anvil, it absolutely will. And for folks who aren't familiar with the FIRE Institute, it's the Free Speech Libertarian Leaning Chairman. Okay. They did their first ever survey of the University of Wyoming this last year in 2025. And I think we were all disappointed that we ranked so low. We ranked low on the ability to have free speech on campus precisely because students felt like that they couldn't speak out. Conservative students and progressive students both shared that the inability to speak freely on campus was a concern to them. I was very grateful to be allowed to participate in a forum on abortion that took place at the university. And one of the people who came and was one of the organizers is a regional director of the Students for Life. And she said two things about the University of Wyoming. She said, one, she'd never seen such a large turnout. Usually, even though they offer free pizza, they only get 5 or 6 folks, and that's mostly because of the pizza. And we had, I don't know, more than 100, 150 in the room from both sides. And she said, two, she had never seen something this contentious, abortion, what is more contentious than abortion, be discussed so civilly and with such respect for the other's viewpoints. I am telling you that I live in Wyoming, I make my home here, I raise my children here, and I'm proud of our state because we're tough that way, because we're not fragile. We do not insist that speech be quelled to make other people be comfortable, and that this is a bill that would explicitly take that away. And so I'm urging you to cowboy up and defeat this bill. We are stronger and we're better than that in Wyoming. And I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee.
And Mr. Chairman, I do just want to let you know that Sherry Davis is online and would like to testify, so whenever you're ready for that as well.
Thank you for the reminder.
Do you want me
Ms.
to wait?
McCoy.
I can wait.
Please go ahead.
Okay. I'm Patricia McCoy, Chapter Chair of Moms for Liberty, Laramie County. I've been a resident of Wyoming and Laramie County since 2007, raised 4 kids here. We are in support of this bill wholeheartedly. It's not a matter of not teaching history. I'm one of the biggest history nerds you'll ever meet in your life. I love history. I'm unfortunate that I didn't get to become an educator like Representative Kelly, but I spend my spare time in the statutes room, reading our statutes from the past. I spend my time investigating and looking into historical events of our country because it's important to learn from the past in order to not make the same mistakes. However, in doing so, you do not need to do it through an ideology viewpoint. You can teach history of slavery without saying it was the result of white supremacy. It was not just the result of white supremacy, and I could spend hours speaking about it, but you can do it without making people the aggressor or the oppressor in certain situations and have those conversations without pushing certain ideologies. Just a few of the components and concept messages and tenets of DEI. They implement disciplinary systems based on ideological compliance. They mandate specific interventions based on group identity doctrine. Do we want to continue to separate and divide our children? They're already being told, some of you are victims and some of you are oppressors just because of the color of your skin. You don't get a choice. That's just who you are and how you're going to be. And that is not acceptable when you are teaching anything to our children in our schools. You should not tell a child they're going to be a victim their whole life, and you should not tell another child they're always going to get what they want because of the color of their skin. That's not how our country works. And it's not what our founding fathers intended when they were writing the Constitution either. Everyone has a right to speak their opinions. My daughter-in-law is a person of color, and I love having conversations with her about her viewpoint and her experiences in our city that she has to go through as a person of color. But it doesn't make me her oppressor. It doesn't make me a mean person to her. We are just family. We don't need to divide each other by the color of our skin, our race, our sex, our religious preferences, or how we vote. We may be a Republican or a Democrat, but we're always going to find things that we can agree on without dividing each other. And that's what DEI does. It divides our children and it makes them notice their skin color more than who they could potentially be. And it limits who they can grow up to be. So we wholeheartedly support this bill. We think it's an excellent bill and it should definitely pass. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? All right, thank you. Could we quickly take the online testimony and then we'll go back to the room?
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman. I will let them into the room now. Ms. Davis, whenever you're ready, you can turn on your camera and your microphone.
Oh, yes, I just figured out that was in my control. Thank you. I am Sherry Davis from Wyoming and appreciate the opportunity to speak today. I can't see any of you now, but that's okay. I guess that's just the way it is. So I would love to speak on DEI. I think it's unfortunate that with such a great title, it does the complete opposite of what it promises to do. It is clearly divisive. It is misleading. We've had many people speak against it at school boards. And I appreciate your willingness to take this stand. You know, if our LSO has reviewed this bill and our state superintendent of schools supports this bill, I hope you are not intimidated in doing the same. I actually am a lactation counselor, so I take some breastfeeding training classes routinely to keep up my certification. And I have to read, if I want the classes that are free, about how oppressive we are as a country and how we see colonial white as beautiful. And I just read this and I can't even believe what it says, 2 paragraphs of how awful we are. And you see it going on in our schools. If you look at America and our Constitution, we was established as a country that all be created equal. And this does the exact opposite. This says there's special groups and special people and get in your place and don't come out. That is DEI. And I really appreciated the woman who shared her Jewish heritage. Anti-Semitism is up like never before. And look what we're pushing, DEI. There is a clear relationship to what's going on in our schools. In fact, my son is African-American as well. And he had at the bank, our friend's daughter was studying to be a teacher. And he says, you can tell she feels sorry for me. And I said, well, did you tell her the truth? He says, no, I think it's really funny, you know? And I says, well, what do you think about this? He says, it's ridiculous. We all bleed red. And so I think that attitude, the attitude of a country who voted President Obama in, really, just like my son, he was treated special because of his skin color. And many people voted for Obama to have the first Black president. That is not discrimination, that's empowering, right? Is it the right reason? No, it's about our character, not our color. It's about our work ethic, not our color. Like, who are we today? Let's quit this divisive education. And we're setting up a generation misconstrued, a teacher, that gal that pitied my son because he was brown is now a teacher teaching what in our schools? We really need to get this under control. And I appreciate you guys being willing to take this on. Thank you. I stand for questions.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
we will finish with the online testimony. There's one more before we
Yep.
come back to the room.
Mr. Chairman, I will let Charles Curley into the room now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Charles Curley, and I am chairman of the Hot Springs County chapter of Moms for Liberty. I share some of the prior speakers' concern. Perhaps we need clearer language that this affects only processes and procedures, but does not affect freedom of speech. I was a big fan of the First Amendment. I think that's a point well taken. My main concern today is from what I know of DEI, it tends to treat people as members of groups from some external characteristic that one has no control over. And it concerns me that this legislation is even necessary in the equality state. On the 28th of August in 1963, a preacher stood appropriately in front of the Lincoln Memorial, and he said, "I have a dream that my 4 children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character." Mr. Chairman, with all due respect, DEI sets that dream back. I support the bill and I will take questions. Thank you very much.
Are there any questions? Seeing none, thank you. Mr. Winter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. My name is Nathan Winters. I'm the president and CEO of the Family Policy Alliance, the Wyoming Family Alliance. And I just want to express my appreciation for this bill and rise in support of it. I appreciate the care that has been shown in the drafting of the bill as it reaffirms that foundational principle that we are all created equal. That affirmation also found in Section 2 of the Wyoming Constitution, which states, "In their inherent right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, all members of the human race are equal." I also appreciate how the bill articulates what DEI is, so that the terms, if they change, if they're no longer called diversity, equity, and inclusion, we can still show how the practices that have been found in that heading are discriminatory, regardless of what they might be called. I do appreciate how the bringer of the bill and Mr. Farmer both caught that one-word typo that does change that section there. And it's clear that that is not the intention of the bringer of the bill or anyone who would support the bill. And so I believe that's an easy fix. The bill, though, I believe that what it really is designed to do is explain that no division of government can undermine truth by saying that one is born a racist based on the color of their skin, or that by advocating for meritocracy and hard work and the American dream should be ever subverted by the state of Wyoming and its governmental processes. This helps in situations where teachers may be forced to attend a training where a contractor is brought in to tell them that they are inherently biased based on the color of their skin. And I can follow up later with an instance of how that has occurred. When a person states that others are fragile based on the color of their skin, that is the very definition of racism. What I truly appreciate is how this bill addresses that issue and ensures that that cannot happen in the state of Wyoming. Thank you, and I would stand for any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions? All right, thank you. Is there any further public comment? Mr. Winnie.
Mr. Chairman, Bill Winnie. I support the bill. Across my career in the Navy, I started at the Naval Academy in '68, commissioned in '72. I saw the Navy go through the upward seminars of the mid-'70s from racial issues. I would note that the military in 1947 actually started the undoing racial preferences. Across my career, I've been a member of selection boards. I've been an Article 15 authority, hearing some 600 or 700 cases in my career. I've written fitness reports on people working under me, and I've been court-martial member twice on some serious charges. And the fundamental issue that you're facing is meritocracy versus making decisions based on other things than merit. And therefore, I support the bill because that's exactly what we have to do. The best way to raise up those that are in perhaps some kind of a a group that's been discriminated against is by them getting there by their own merit. And I saw that in the military. You see that all over the place. In my case, I was nuclear operators on submarines. I was a instructor out at the old Navy nuclear training facilities out there. You advance people based on their brain power and how they do business. And so therefore, I support the bill, and subject to your questions, thank you.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions? Thank you. Any further public comment? Oh. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, committee members, Dickey Shaner, Department of Ed. Just hearing the discussion, I think it reads correctly, but maybe there's a really easy way to clarify the issue on page 5. Looking at line 1, Romanet 2, just to throw it out there, if that just read engage in institutional discrimination, semicolon, create a new Romanet 3 that would read require instruction in institutional discrimination, semicolon, then renumber the current Romanet 3 into Romanet 4, and it reads the same way. Basically just breaking up the current Romanet 2 to make it clear, so there's no sort of combining terms in that one. So it would read engage in institutional discrimination, and then there'd be a separate Romanet for require instruction in institutional discrimination. Just food for thought. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further public comment is now closed. Committee, what's your pleasure?
Second.
The bill has been moved by Representative Strzok and seconded by Vice Chair Lawley. Representative Rodriguez-Williams, would you like to come back up and work the bill with us? Or not?
Chairman, I have an amendment.
Vice Chair Lawley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I would recommend amendment on page 3, line 6, that we remove the word not. I agree that it's a typo and that should eliminate some confusion. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Motion has been seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The amendment passes. Vice Chair Lawley.
I have another amendment, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
I would move what was just recommended by the department, the language. I think it helps with the confusion. So we're on page 5, line 1. We would strike the language or required instruction and then the word in. So it would read, Romanet 2 would read engage in institutional discrimination, and then adding a new Romanet 3 and renumbering, but the new 3 would say or require instruction in institutional discrimination.
Did someone second that amendment? Okay, I have an amendment to your amendment. The new Romanet 3, instead of require instruction in institutional discrimination, it would say require instruction promoting institutional discrimination.
I would agree to add that to my amendment if the second is approved.
Okay, say it again, I'm sorry.
So instead of prohibiting instruction in institutional discrimination, we're promoting instruction, we're prohibiting instruction promoting institutional discrimination.
Yes.
Okay.
Any thoughts, Representative
I'm okay with that.
Rodriguez-Williams?
Mr. Chairman, I would consider that friendly amendment.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion on the amendment?
Mr. Chairman.
Representative Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would consider adding to that amendment as well, just the explicit language that nothing in this section would prohibit discussion in instruction. What are your thoughts?
Vice Chair Lally.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would say maybe we do what we have, and then you do another amendment for that, for clarity of the record. Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion on the amendment? Representative Kelly.
Okay, I'm wondering if, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm wondering if we're making this too complex. I'm looking at line 1 of page 5, and if we just strike the words engage in or, then we are no longer banning free speech, and we're just prohibiting the requirement to instruct institutional discrimination. So therefore, we would be prohibiting compelled speech while protecting free speech. It might be a little more elegant to write it as such.
Further discussion on Representative Lally. Do you have any thoughts? We should keep how it is.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess my response to that is that I think what we're trying to do here is talk about the promoting of something as something you should do, as opposed to teaching about something that may exist. And so I think adding the word promoting that the good chair added, I don't think it really infringes so much with free speech, but in an institutional, but that's just my view.
Representative Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My only issue with that is who interprets then what the word promote means. Some may interpret that just speaking about it as a promotion of it. That would be my concern as an educator.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Amendment as it is now.
Yes, would you be Representative or Vice Chair Lally?
So the amendment is on line 1, on page 5, Romanet 2. We strike the word, after the word in, first word in, engage in, we strike or required instruction in institutional discrimination. So it will read, Romanet 2 would read, engage in institutional discrimination, adding a new Romanet 3, require instruction promoting institutional discrimination. And so far, that's this current amendment. I think there'll be another to add another Romanet concerning the idea of what it's not doing, so.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
Nay.
All right, the amendment passes. Any further amendments?
Mr. Chairman.
Representative Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to make an amendment. At the very, after Romanet II, it would create a new section C that would state nothing in this section shall prohibit discussion in instruction.
Do we have a second?
Could you just read it one more time for me?
Right, so at the very end of the bill, it will state nothing in this section shall prohibit discussion in instruction. I'd like to ask the sponsor of the bill if that's a friendly amendment.
Representative Rodriguez Williams, if you have a comment.
Mr. Chairman, I would just lean back on the committee. That would just be a policy decision.
Thank you. Do we have a second for the amendment? Okay. So motion by Representative Singh, seconded by Representative Kelly. Any discussion? Representative Bratton and then Singh. Representative Singh.
So, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, in the definition of discussion here, that's really to ensure that educators are able to talk about a controversial topic, say like the history of Native Americans in the United States, for example, where we would be able to address things that did happen in our history, but from a more objective viewpoint, instead of assigning a moral character to a narrative, that instead it's simply talking about historical fact and what actually happened.
Representative Bratton.
So talking about not promoting, you're making a distinction with this amendment that they can talk about, just not promote, is the intent of your amendment. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair.
Representative Singh.
Mr. Chairman, yes, that's correct. Instead of assigning a particular characteristic to whatever entity in history we may be talking about, it would be more about the facts of the matter.
Vice Chair Lawley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do you envision that your amendment, Representative Singh, would also include students participating in the discussion, have the freedom to make comments they may have about what happened there that might be diverse opinions shared on that and the conclusions about that the students would and the teacher would have the freedom to discuss that?
Representative Singh.
Mr. Chairman, yeah, that's precisely what I'm attempting to do with this amendment.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no. The amendment has passed. Are there any further amendments on this bill? Any discussion on the bill as a whole? Representative Erickson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question for the author that she can probably answer, or maybe Mr. Shaner. Do we have other states where a similar policy, a law such as this applies and is in work? We mentioned, I know we had Florida mentioned at one time. Do you have any examples of how it's surviving challenges and the nature of that?
Representative Rodriguez Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Representative Erickson, for your question. I don't have specific states. I didn't come with a list, but I can tell you that aside from a legal shift on DEI, there's definitely a shift tide of public opinion as well. There are states that are turning very hard against DEI, and there is some universities out there. I can cite some things that I've read. I can tell you at the University of Michigan, for instance, $250 million DEI investment resulted in the school becoming less inclusive, according to a survey of students and faculty there. A study at Rutgers University and the Network Contagion Research Institute conducted found that DEI can induce hostility, increase authoritarian tendencies, and foster agreement with extreme rhetoric. I can go on with different research that's out there and where states are, again, shifting. And I think we'll see more of it with this change in administration in the White House. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Let's try if we could keep discussion to potential changes to the bill at this point, or discussion of the bill amongst the committee. That would be appreciated. Is there any more discussion on this bill? Representative Strzok.
Thank you, Chairman. I think partly, I just have a comment. Pretty much this bill is about what the government cannot do, not the students. This is not stopping the student speech at all. And I think that's where we're getting a little confusion here with this, and I just wanted to point that out. It has nothing about students' free speech. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, question having been called, please call the roll.
Mr. Chairman, on House Bill 147, Prohibition of Institutional Discrimination, do pass as amended. Representative Bratton?
Aye.
Representative Erickson?
Aye.
Representative Guggenmoss?
Aye.
Representative Kelly?
Aye.
Representative Lawley?
Aye.
Representative Singh?
Aye.
Representative Strzok?
Aye.
Representative Williams?
Aye.
Chairman Andrew?
Aye.
That is 9 ayes.
The bill has passed the committee. And with that, we are adjourned.